Canadians are getting a tiny bit of inflation relief news today. New data from Statistics Canada shows inflation fell to its lowest level in nearly 2 years this March. It sat at 4.3% for the month. That's the fifth decline in a row, though prices are still going up faster than the Bank of Canada's target rate of about 2%. Here's how all that news played out on Parliament Hill today.
Because of the galloping inflation this Prime Minister has caused, two-thirds of Canadians say they are cutting back on summer vacations, and 1/4 say they've canceled their vacations altogether, but they'll still have to pay for someone else's vacation. $160,000 of taxpayer expenses for the Prime Minister to go down to the private villa, luxurious villa of a super-rich Trudeau Foundation donor.
Our family have been good friends with this family for about 50 years, and as always, we work with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that all rules are followed.
This is about influence and power for the super-rich.
The Leader of the Opposition struggles with the concept of friendship.
So as you can see, inflation relief overpowered there by news of a pricey Jamaican vacation, with the bill coming in for the Prime Minister's winter holiday at more than $160,000. The government says the majority of those costs can be attributed to security, but Tory leader PM Poilievre insists that it shows the Prime Minister is out of touch as Canadians struggle to meet post-pandemic pricing. The Prime Minister's response, you heard it there, Poilievre just doesn't understand friendship. Let's bring in the front bench to help us unpack all of that. With us this evening, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's the CEO of Space Canada. Conservative strategist Kate Harrison, Vice Chair at Summa Strategies. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair, and the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Great to see you tonight. Rob, I'll start with you. These expense stories normally just kind of like give me a pit in the, I don't love covering them because it's like kind of low-hanging fruit often, but the back and forth in QP was interesting against the backdrop of kind of cost of living. What did you think about how the opposition handled and how the Prime Minister did?
I was a little confused, Vassy, because the Pierre Poilievre was citing a CBC story, technically a Radio Canada story. Of course, he thinks it's liberal propaganda, according to at least his Twitter account. So I'm a bit confused.
Not today,
by that.
I guess. Yeah.
But I actually took a Jamaican vacation earlier this year. I didn't spend $160,000. I spent more than I wish I had, but I was gobsmacked by those numbers. And obviously, the Prime Minister of Canada is different than the journalist. He has to have security and Mounties and so on, and presumably doesn't fly on WestJet like I did. But it's not a good look for the Prime Minister if his. I mean, this isn't the first vacation problem he has had. The Aga Khan trip. I mean, he's had a lot of these types of situations. And if I'm Mr. Poilievre, I would be attacking him on this because it is fertile ground for the Conservatives. Now, Mr. Poilievre lives in a $15 million taxpayer-funded mansion, Stornoway, as the Leader of the Opposition does. So he's not exactly the greatest deliverer of a prudent fiscal message, as maybe someone who's not living on the taxpayer dime. But still, it's good fertile ground for him.
Yeah, Tom, I think, look, the irony of invoking the CBC article after, like as Rob points out, spending the last number of days saying it's an invalid source of news is not lost on anyone. I think, though, the way that it was framed today is what kind of piqued my interest, because the polling that Poilievre presented saying, like, lots of Canadians are not going to take a vacation because of the financial situation they face, against the backdrop of, yes, this is a lot of security costs, but sort of the nature of the friendship, the level of the all that kind of stuff. Like, I can see how the Conservatives would think that would resonate with some people today. I'm not saying it's entirely full of merit, but I do get it.
Yeah, I think that Trudeau was overreaching a bit when he said we always talk to the Ethics Commissioner because, of course, in the case of the Aga Khan's Island, he had not done so and he was banged out for having broken the law. He did not break the law this time. It allowed, you can go to the house of a friend, and these people, the Greens, are clearly friends of the Trudeaus. That part's easy. The tougher part, of course, is a question of judgment. And I think that the people around Justin Trudeau simply didn't manage this time to convince him that it was a really bad idea. Once those pictures got out there and once people understood that it was up to $7,000 US per night to stay in one of those villas because they are rented out otherwise, the average Canadian says, well, that doesn't even make any sense. And it brings everything back. It brings the beach house in Tofino back. It brings the $6,000 a night hotel room for the Queen's funeral. It brings all of that back. So Mr. Trudeau has a certain knack for talking with people. He knows how to listen to the average Canadian. But I think that there's such a disconnect with what the average Canadian family has been going through at this time of high inflation, when people literally couldn't afford their groceries. And I think that Mr. Trudeau should have shown a little bit more understanding of that, and maybe found a way to go to that lovely house that he and his brother own in the Laurentians, for example, and just stay a little bit closer to home than showing these pictures, which show somebody who is very entitled and quite disconnected, as I say.
Let me be the devil's advocate, Kate, for a second and say, look, is the Prime Minister supposed to live like the rest of us? Is he supposed to live in a house that's falling apart, or travel in a plane that is also falling apart, and not take any? I mean, President Obama used to take nice vacations in Hawaii every year, and I don't remember the same level of outrage. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, everybody's entitled to a vacation, and the Prime Minister is special, and one of the reasons why costs are so high are for security and other means. But I also think one of the most important qualities and skill sets in politicians who wish to get reelected is authenticity and relatability. And we have this pattern of events, as Rob and Tom and others have talked about, where the Prime Minister isn't exercising the same relatability and understanding and concern that normal Canadians are grappling with. And it's not to suggest that he can't take a vacation at all, because he is entitled to that, but does it need to be at the opulent resort of a rich friend? That doesn't bode so well when there's been so many other cases like the Aga Khan, like that $6,000 hotel room for the Queen's funeral. It just adds another log to the fire and really creates an own goal for the Liberals. It seems from an issues management perspective, they've really lost their sense of proactivity here. We've seen it play out with the deferral of action on the Trudeau Foundation and foreign intelligence thing by delaying Katie Telford appearing. She then appeared. It's a non-issue. So they just seem to be taking a back foot on so many of these issues and lacking that proactive, anticipatory sight that a government this season ought to have.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brian, because the CBC reporting referenced the fact that many people within the Prime Minister's own office were kind of clearly giving them that information and saying that there was a lively debate and that there were people trying to, aware of the optics of it. Regardless, like I said, of the merits and the fact that he should be able to take a vacation, there seemed to be people around him who were aware of the fact that that kind of vacation at this particular time for Canadians might not go over so well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with Kate's assessment. I think it's one of those things where he's allowed to do it, and as Tom mentioned, didn't break the law. There's really nothing at the end of the day that was untoward. He checked with the Conflict of Interest Commissioner, which is what he definitely should have done given past experiences. And as has been mentioned a few times by and even by some of the leader of the NDP I saw in an interview, obviously the Prime Minister is allowed to take a vacation. I just want to add one little point, although the house in the Laurentian sounds very nice for someone here in my basement in Shediac Bridge, New Brunswick. When you're a Prime Minister, when you're the head of state, I can certainly imagine that you'd like to maybe leave a little bit. It's kind of hard to have a vacation if you go to the corner store and everybody recognizes you and people are able to sort of talk shop. Let's put it that way. So I do think it's kind of normal as well once in a while to want to get away. I also think the cost should not even be discussed. I mean, I think the cost, with the backdrop of inflation, fine, and the idea that the symbol of a vacation in Jamaica at the villas during a time that people are having a tough time with the crisis cost of living, get that, fine, but the cost, come on, it's really all about security. I don't want my Prime Minister, and it can be any party that's the Prime Minister, I don't want my Prime Minister going on a vacation without security, and that represents the vast majority of the cost. So I would add that if Poilievre ever does become Prime Minister, I certainly think he'll take a vacation at one point, and there'll be costs, and it'll be, if you put it in a context, they'll be able to make it look like it's huge costs and shouldn't have been done. It's going to be something, if ever that happens, like Trump and Obama with golf. Remember how Trump kept saying, "Oh, if I was president, why is Barack Obama keep playing golf when he's president?" And then he became the president, and he played a lot of golf. And to me, it's just one of those things that you do when you're in the opposition, where you very well know it's normal. And if you were in that position, you would do some version of that. Now, again, I get it. To Kate's point, if you want to get reelected, you want to sort of maintain public opinion. Probably not the right time. Probably not the right place. That I definitely think is true. But the rest, we should let it go.